Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bleed Blue podcast. This is the podcast where we talk about everything Evil Geniuses, except this is going to be a special episode. In this episode, I am going to only focus on CSGO. This week has been a relatively slow week for one, and also I'm going to be posting this on Sunday, the same day that I'm making the video, because there's a reason. There's a lot of things I want to cover, and I want to cover these things and post a video about them before the major starts rather than the day of. Um, and so it's one of those things where I've debated with this podcast only making it CS:GO related, but the problem is I watch all the other EG teams play, and I want to support them, and so I want to discuss them. Listen, it's not a secret. I'm almost 100% positive that any of the sections of my videos that get views are definitely going to be the Counter Strike portions because I have more to give in that area, right? I've put about 6,000 hours into the game. Been playing since 2015. That's not a long amount of time, really. But frankly, it's CS:GO has been my life in terms of gaming. If I'm gonna go play games, I don't even consider myself a gamer anymore. I just consider myself a Counter Strike gamer or a Counter Strike player. Sorry. Um, and that's just because I really just play. Counter Strike is the one game that even no matter how many times you get tired of it, no matter how many times you get frustrated, I'll always come back. It will forever be my favorite game. And so I've watched a lot of the scene. I listen to a whole lot of podcasts. Basically any podcast that's Counter Strike related, I probably listen to it. Um, and so I feel like I just have a lot to give on this particular game compared to some of the other games like Rocket League and all these other esports games that Evil Geniuses is partaking in, right? I'm getting better. I'm learning as I go, but Counter Strike is still going to be the best thing for me to talk about. um, so, with that being said, why am I creating this video? Well, I am creating this special episode and posting it today because I feel like there's a lot of false narratives that are going around Evil Geniuses. People just discounting them right off the bat, using the same lazy narrative of well, EG's been shit for 2 years, and how is this any different? But the problem with that is they don't look into why it actually is different. They just roll with the narrative because they just honestly they just don't they just can't be bothered to take the time to actually look into a team that's been bad for 2 years. They don't care anymore, and they don't even really like Evil Geniuses as an org, and so it just doesn't it just they don't care, right? They just don't care, and it frustrates me because to me it's a lazy narrative that's been spinning around the scene for past couple years now. And on top of that, they're taking teams like Imperial and Zero Zero Nation, which are teams that Evil Geniuses is definitely better than, and they're just they're pandering to the Brazilian crowd. They're basically just saying that these teams could make it through the first stage. It's not likely, but they're saying that they could snag one of those last couple spots, right? And to me, if you're going to have those teams in that conversation, you almost certainly have to have Evil Geniuses in that conversation. And the problem is they're not even mentioning them in the conversation. They're basically just saying, no, Evil Geniuses is irrelevant. They've been irrelevant for 2 years. They're still irrelevant now. And yeah, they're probably just going to go out, in your last place along with IHC and Greyhound. And to me, that's disrespectful. It's not an accurate opinion, or it's not you're not looking and taking the time into how good the team actually is. And so I just kind of wanted to, go through my perspective on what I think Evil Genius's expectations. First off, what are the expectations that everyone thinks EG should have in terms of, and I'm not meaning like based off of how much money they have or whatever, because obviously Evil Geniuses is a big enough brand and organization that they should be trying to go for, major tournaments. They should be competing for the win. But when you're looking at now, I would argue that doesn't really fit their philosophy and how they want to build teams in their esports games as of, with Nicole as the new owner. But that's a topic for another day. And I've already brought it up on previous episodes of the podcast. But for this episode, I want to specifically focus on what do people think Evil Geniuses will do in the first stage, and what are the expectations that should be in place based off of what I'm personally seeing. So first, let's kind of just talk about all the things that people are saying as to why EG isn't going to do anything at this major, and I'm going to counter them. And so this is all the things that I have been hearing from the different podcasts that I listen to, and just the different things that I've seen people post or people say in the past couple of days or week or so before the major. So here are some of them, right? EG has been shit for 2 years. EG did poorly at the Blast Showdown. Fury and Liquid did not prepare for Evil Geniuses at the major qualifier, which is why EG looked better than they actually are. EG had an easy run in the major qualifier. And in terms of supporting Brazilian teams over Evil Geniuses, there's going to be a massive home crowd buff and an experience advantage for teams like Imperial. And EG is basically irrelevant. So first off, let's just get the first one out of the way. EG's been shit for 2 years. This is objectively true, okay? If you look at the past 2 years, EG has been terrible in Counter-Strike. So much so to the point where I stopped watching them play last year because it hurt so bad watching them play. Very frequently, you would end a series or a game, and Evil Geniuses would not even get 10 rounds. Hell, they might not even get 8. It's been pretty shameful, honestly. And the last roster they had with the Stewie 2K roster was by far and away the worst roster in terms of what the expectation was and what they actually did and how it all crumbled around them. Disappointing, embarrassing, shameful. All these words come to mind when you think of Evil Geniuses, specifically in the beginning of this year, and definitely for the previous couple of years. But I think people are taking this too far, and essentially what they're not doing is they're not looking at this new team with Nealon and Hext and an Automatic who's had more time to get used to how the modern day Counter-Strike is being played. They haven't been paying attention to who's stepping up. Are Breezy and Cirque actually reaching? Look like they're improving, getting back to some of that old form that they had. What is the identity of Evil Geniuses? What's their play style like? Are they an easy team to play against? What makes this team unique? They're not doing those things. They're just saying, well, the team's been bad for 2 years. I don't really care. They brought in some no-name players, so they just can't be good. That's basically what they're saying. They're discrediting these new players right off the bat. They're discrediting Nealon and his IGLing ability and his ability and the plays he makes. They're just discrediting him right off the bat because they've never heard of him. They didn't watch K23. They're discrediting Hex because, yeah, he's good in NA, but it's NA. They have no, basically not much talent anyway right now. They're looking at a Breeze and a Cirque, and they're just like, they'll never hit their 2019 peak, so why should I bother? Why should I care? Automatic is the only thing they'll talk about with any amount of like, what? There's promise here, right? And even then, some people don't think Automatic is really like a star player. I just think it's lazy. I mean, you look at Evil Geniuses in the past, couple of months, basically since this roster has been formed. I am not lying when I say to you, they have improved at every single event they have played so far with this new lineup. The only event that is the exception is Blast Showdown. Blast Showdown is the only event where they underperformed compared to their expectations, which again, I will talk about later when I start to bring into the Brazilian teams and kind of, and actually I have my own separate point about the showdown, which, you know what? Let's see. Is there anything else? Yeah, screw it. Let's just get to it now. Right? The showdown. What happened in the showdown? Now, I could remind you that this is a format that, isn't necessarily the best. Evil Genius, or I'm sorry, just any team that was favored in the Blast Showdown, this is the kind of event you go to right before a major and you just don't perform well. Because not only is the timing of the event not the greatest because it's, right before a major, but a lot of these teams in this showdown are playing essentially as if this is their major because they're not going to make it because they didn't make it to the major, and this is the only chance they have left this year of going to a big event. So All these up and coming teams, the teams that didn't qualify for the major, they're gunning for your head, right? They're saying this is our major qualifier, right? This is the big event for us. And so that's something to consider. Not to mention the fact that it's an online qualifier with no lower bracket, which means one misstep in a best of three, and you're done. If you get caught off guard by some team you've never played before, that's just the end of your run. You don't get a second opportunity, right? In many ways, the Blast Showdown format is just not very good. Now, we're not going to stress too much about that. Evil Geniuses still should have made it through this, right? Just like Complexity, just like Vitality, right? These are all teams that should have made it through their Blast Showdown things, but they didn't, right? They just didn't make it. So let's break it down a little bit, right? They played Fluxo in a best of three. I've talked about this previously in the previous podcast. They played Fluxo in a best of three. They played Dust 2, a map that Evil Geniuses really isn't all that great at, but has been trying to improve at and has wanted to play the map and get better at the map. That much is clear. And so this was an interesting test because Fluxo is a good Dust 2 team, and so it was going to be a match where you expect Evil Geniuses to probably lose the map, but you want to see, okay, well, are they improving on this map, right? And when you look at it, it was a 1917, and that doesn't even tell the full story of the game. Fluxo won 1917, but guys, Lukowski had an incredible match, and performed extremely well. But Evil Geniuses should have won this game in regulation. Not only did they made the ninja defuse happened against them, that was a round they should have won. I can't even count how many 5v3s they just wasted in man advantage situations, the rounds they would lose where they had 5v3 and they would just lose. It was unreal on Dust 2 how many times that happened. Um, and they still, at the end of all of that, by the end of regulation, they were still ahead. They were up like 15-14 at the end of regulation in a round where EG had, you know, all the money they could have wanted, all the weapons they could have wanted, against a Fluxo team that had Tech 9 armor and was just going to have to do some miracle strat. And EG even read what strat Fluxo was going to do in that round, where they ended up doing a B site split. And what EG did is they stacked the B bomb site earlier in the round, and so they were set up perfectly for it. You could make an argument that maybe the setup that they had, even though they had three players there, the setup wasn't the best in terms of stopping the B split. But essentially, what they had was automatic was put up in the oh geez, it's like right around window, that ledge that you can sit on, where you're pretty high up in the air. He was sitting on that ledge on the plank, and on the wooden plank, and he got a kill. He died, right? But automatic was playing there. Hexed and I don't know who the other player was. It might have been Nealon. I can't recall off the top of my head, but basically they had one player playing in the bomb site, on like around default, and then they had another player playing at the car. And essentially what happened was Lukowski traded automatic out, picked up his gun, and just got two more kills instantly. He just destroyed the bomb site, and the round was over. But EG should have won this map. They definitely should have won this map. Cirque had a very, very, very good series, by the way, through this whole series. I'm not going to get too in depth on what happened on Mirage and Nuke. Mirage, they won. Nuke, it's a 16-8. It should have been closer than that. EG lost a lot of rounds they should have won, but again, it happens. Whatever, you move on. But I actually saw some encouraging things from Evil Geniuses in the sense that their Dust 2 looked pretty good. Now, yes, they lost Nuke pretty terribly. I that puts a little bit of doubt in there, but I'm not going to read into it too much when it's a team like Fluxo, who is a team you're not really going to play very often. Fluxo has plenty of tape to look at Evil Genius's Nuke, and Fluxo just they can catch you off guard, right? And even then, Evil Genius had so many rounds where they spammed people through smokes, had a 5v3 and lost. So, I'm not going to take too much out of that, right? But let's just put this in the context of the showdown. What ended up happening after that happened, though, right? How well did Fluxo do? What were the other teams at the event? How did they do, in comparison? So Fluxo ends up going through the entire bracket and beats MIBR in 2-1 fashion, and is going to the fall final. Not only did they do that, they played 0-0 Nation in the second round, a team that is also going to be at this major, a team that people have been putting over Evil Geniuses, and 0-0 Nation got destroyed by them 16-11, 16-10. 2-0, move on, easy peasy. And then they went and they beat MIBR 2-1. MIBR is a team that went from the other side of the bracket. Complexity, by the way, just because I do think Complexity is a worse team than Evil Genius is currently, even though many people would probably disagree with me on that because they are fanboys of Complexity and they don't actually objectively look at how good teams are currently. But Complexity lost to Sharks, guys. And they lost to Sharks 2-0, 16-9, 16-14. Pretty disgraceful. MIBR ended up playing Sharks, and they beat them 2-0. Wasn't really all that close, 16-8, 16-13. And then they had the match against Fluxo. My point with this being, was the showdown a bad result for Evil Geniuses? Yes, it was a bad result for Evil Geniuses. They should have made the final, if not won the whole thing. I predicted them to win the whole thing. They did not. And it sucks. But I do think when you look at the context of the situation, and you also take a look at the fact that not many favorites made it through this qualifier and actually made it through to go to the fall final, like it sucks, but you move on, right? And I think there were some good things to take out of it. For example, them looking good on Dust 2. They showed a lot of really good things. They even switched it up, and instead of starting CT side, they started T side, and I think that helped. Um, you know, and so I don't understand this notion that because they lost to Fluxo in a close best of three, that they're somehow like just irrelevant now in an online qualifier with no lower bracket. So that just doesn't make any sense to me. I threw in the 0-0 Nation example because people think 0-0 Nation is a better team than Evil Geniuses, going into this major somehow, and I just don't understand how that's even possible. But whatever. Moving on to the next point, which is Furia and Liquid did not prepare for EG at the major qualifier, which kind of also falls in line with my EG had an easy run in the major qualifier. This to me is outrageous. Like, this is just like practically retconning history. That's what this is. It's so stupid. I just don't understand how people can just make up shit and just like act like it's that this actually is what happened. Just doesn't make sense. So let's break down. First let's break down, I guess, the overall run of Evil Geniuses at this event, and then we'll get into whether or not breaking down why Furia and Team Liquid definitely did not just phone it in playing against Evil Geniuses. Okay, here was Evil Geniuses' run to the major. They played Nouns. Now, Nouns, if you remember, is a team that, and by the way, EG beat Nouns 16-7. They pretty much dominated them. Nouns is a team that beat Oplano for starters, and very nearly beat Imperial. It was a close best of three that they ended up losing. Imperial was on the brink of losing to Nouns. Okay, Nouns. So just remember that when I get into Brazilian teams like Imperial and 0-0 Nation being ranked higher than Evil Geniuses coming into this event. Right? So you've got Nouns. They played Nouns first, beat them pretty handily. The next team they played against was Furia in a 16-14 win that they had on Nuke. It was a rematch, which I'll get into later. But they played Furia. And then the last team, which is not an easy matchup, the next team they played was 9Z. Now, granted, I will say, out of all the matchups you could have had in the deciding, to see who's going to go 3-0, at the major, was 9Z the easiest draw? Yes, I think 9Z is probably the easiest draw if you're looking at just, expectations for all the teams, how well the teams have been playing. I guess. I don't even know, really. You could definitely in this event make an argument that 9Z was a better team than Complexity. So I don't even know that I fully agree with that. But if you look at name value, yes, 9Z was the easiest draw. They also had some tight best of ones against I think Imperial and who else did they play against? Let's see here. What was 9Z's run to the major? They had a close game against 00 Nation where they had to do a comeback, close comeback on against Imperial as well. They made 2 comebacks, I think. And then EG they lost 2-1, and then they beat ATK 2-0. So I mean, look, and ATK was one of the better teams out of the teams who didn't qualify. Look, I think it's pretty good. That's not that bad at all. I think really what it is you look at, right. You just take a look at, let's see here. Where am I trying to find? So, is that an easy? That's probably name value wise the easiest match you could have had, in a way. But I still disagree that it's that easy of a match. Frankly, I mean 9Z had the 3rd highest rating as a team at the entire event. You can't be that bad. You can't be that bad if you've got the third highest rating at the event. They were playing well this event, right? 9Z was playing super well this event. For example, they were rated higher than Complexity by the end of the event. Um, you know, uh, and they beat them. So you're telling me that you look at the statistics for the Road to Rio, America's RMR. The top 3 teams are Furia, Liquid, and 9Z. Now, Evil Geniuses beat Furia, almost beat Liquid, and beat 9Z, the 3 highest rated teams at the event. I don't know how that means that that's an easy run into the major, but apparently it is. So that doesn't make any sense to me. Now breaking down, well, Furia probably just didn't care and just didn't prepare for them. I've heard this argument. I don't really understand it because it's like retconning history. So not even like a week or 2 before, right, when ESL Pro League was going on, Evil Geniuses played Furia and Liquid in their group, and they played a best of 3. Liquid dominated them, right? Liquid dominated them. It wasn't very close. But Furia was a close series. Furia was a series where Evil Geniuses almost won. And in particular, on Nuke. On Nuke, Evil Geniuses lost every single, like, they could not win a single anti-eco round, and they just lost to Furia in a close map on Nuke. Furia knew Evil Geniuses was going to play Nuke during this qualifier. They said so. Not only did they say so, but why is Furia just going to look at EG and just be like, yeah, let's just not really prep for them? Like, it's only like, one of the, it's only to qualify for the major. It's only to play a map against the team that, was very close before. Yeah, let's just not prep for them too much. We're a better team anyway. You really think that's what Furia did going into that best of 1? Do you really think that? Because if you do, I think you're just being delusional. And even though this was a 16-14 win, it was a close game, Evil Geniuses actually should have won a little bit earlier than they did because Safe got an incredible 1v2 clutch that ended up saving them, for an extra round before Evil Geniuses pretty much battered them on the final round, on the 15-14 round, to win the best of 1. I don't know how people have just thought that Furia didn't prepare for them. It doesn't make any sense to me. Furia quite clearly prepared for them, quite clearly knew that it was going to be on Nuke, quite clearly cared about the match. Like, I just don't understand how you can say that. And as for Team Liquid has usually gotten the better of Evil Geniuses. And if you just looked at the number and saw the series score as 2-0, you would just be like, all right, well, Team Liquid just battered them again. What's new? Team Liquid's pretty much had EG's number every single step of the way. So you might think, well, that's probably, they probably just didn't prepare. Not true. Not true at all. If you want to know why, it's quite easy to reason as to why, right? Because it's to qualify for the Legends slot. It's to get out of the first stage, not even have to play in it. Of course you're going to try for that series. And you're not just going to take a team that just went 3-0 and beat Furia, the second best team at the event, and just go, let's not try against that team. Like, of course you're going to prepare. It's proven by the map veto. Because what does Liquid do? They say, screw it. Let's play Evil Geniuses on Ancient, a map that we know they don't play, right? Or haven't played very often, at the very least. The last time they had played it, I think, was at the major qualifier, the online qualifier against B Hop, and Brett got like 60 kills or something mental like that. Um, you know, so they removed, and Liquid removed Nuke. They said we're going to take away one of your best maps. We're going to pick into one of the maps that you don't play, right? And then EG and Liquid felt confident, obviously playing on Overpass because it's a map that they're both good at. And Liquid is confident that they're the better team, so they're going to be okay with that. And then they were going to go to an Inferno, which Liquid removed Mirage because EG is a decent Mirage team. To me, look, I don't understand how Liquid just didn't take this seriously. For one, the stakes are too high to not take seriously, and secondly, you look at the match, it was fucking close, guys. Like 25-23 on Ancient is crazy. Like, I don't think anybody expected that to be a even remotely close series or close map. And EG really should have pulled it away. They should have won it in regulation, and even in overtimes they should have won because they had moments in overtime where they had an advantage and they still couldn't win. And I'm not getting mad at Evil Geniuses for losing. They pushed Liquid to their absolute limit on that map, which is a map that they didn't have as much preparation on. So, in my eyes, I think that's a good thing, and I think Ancient definitely also showed, just some really good things out of EG's T sides, and I think EG is actually a very underrated T side team. For some reason, teams just don't think, and analysts don't think that EG is just like, if anything, what they need to work on is their CT sides because their T sides are pretty good, like for the most part. Now I say that, and then moving into Overpass, they had a terrible T side. They only got 4 rounds, which was very surprising. EG is normally a team that picks up T-side rounds on Overpass. They like Overpass, and it's kind of shocking to only see them get 4 rounds. But they did. They only got 4 rounds, but then they made a CT side comeback and brought it to overtime where they basically just barely lost out against Liquid in 1917. And that's the series. So I don't see, and again, guys, remember, Team Liquid, right? These NA people, these NA hopefuls and analysts are predicting that Team Liquid might make the finals of the major. Okay? They think Liquid's that good. I don't know how. How can you in one end say Team Liquid is like a favorite, or not a favorite, but is a contender to make the finals? And then you look at EG, who they barely beat, and you go, that team's irrelevant. They're not going to do anything at this major. How does that happen? How do you just? And it's like it'd be one thing, guys, if this was just it just happened this one time. They beat Furia. They've played Furia close every time they've played them. I just don't understand. How many times is EG just going to get absolutely disrespected when they are playing the best opposition that they can play? And they're doing well. Like they're not doing bad. Like they're doing well. And then you just compare them to teams like 00 Nation and Imperial, and people just go, it's Brazil, so they must be better. Like, okay, whatever. So it kind of helps me transition. Supporting Brazilian teams over Evil Geniuses, is there a massive home crowd buff? First off, I would just like to say I think the home crowd buff is completely overrated. And I say overrated because I don't mean that it doesn't exist. I think to some degree it exists. But if you're trying to tell me that a home crowd buff is going to make Imperial, of all teams, play like a completely different team and qualify for the next stage, I do not understand what you're talking about. Like, that makes no sense to me. Imperial is lucky they're even here. ESL doesn't even believe in them, which is why they made a fucking, crowd for the first stage, because they were like, shit, we gotta have some Brazilian fans watch Imperial play in the major, because they're probably not gonna make it past the first stage. Like, it's so stupid to me. Look, you can give them a slight buff, but this notion that like being in your home in a home crowd environment makes you better is overblown completely. Um, and the other argument they have for teams like Imperial is their experience, their wealth of experience on LAN. They just play better on LAN. Guys, you do remember that Imperial played Pain Gaming in a LAN environment with a crowd in Australia earlier this year. Not even that long ago, really. It was only a couple months ago, if that. And Pain Gaming destroyed them. They destroyed them. I mean, come on. What are we talking about here? So, like, that to me, it's just ridiculous, man. The disrespect is unreal. The disrespect is unreal. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, how can you just not, like, look, I am not saying Evil Geniuses is a team that is going to make it out of the first stage. I put them as my 3-0, but I put them as my 3-0 because I put all the other teams that I thought could had a better chance at making it, and as my bottom 7 teams or whatever. And I threw a flyer on EG because they have a very easy matchup against IHC in the first round. They have really good seeding. They're a team that is better than a lot of these other teams, and I think could push some of the better teams to their limits. Um, and so I think if they're going to benefit off the better seeding for the entire stage, I think EG definitely has a chance to sneak through and could very well do it in 3-0 fashion, although it will be very, very difficult. They'll have to play a good team in the last, if they go 2-0, right? They're going to have to play a really good team. I don't know if that ends up happening, right? And I'm not saying that they will. That's not what I expect out of EG. I expect EG to probably not make it out of this stage. I'm gonna be honest. I don't think they're gonna make it out of the stage. I think it's gonna be close. I think it's gonna be really close. But I don't know that they're, you know, I don't know if they improve the way they've been improving. I think they will um, very narrowly make it to the next stage if they show the improvement that the constant improvement that they've been showing over these past couple months. I think the potential is there, but I don't know that I can feel confident saying that they will make it past the stage, right? That's all I'm saying. But people are acting like this team has no chance of making it to the next stage. Zero. They think Imperial and Zero Zero Nation would body bag this team, which is mental to me. They were talking on, I hate calling out a particular podcast because I haven't called out any of the other ones, but I was listening to um, It's Server Time, and they were talking about Pronogo seemed to be the only one who was like, guys, are you guys kidding me with this? But the rest of them seriously believe IHC actually has a decent chance of upsetting Evil Geniuses. I'm talking like they said the odds for them were like they'd take like 70-30 odds. Like, guys, I'll say as a disclaimer, I understand it's IHC in a best of one, and it's a best of one. You never know what's going to happen, I guess. But guys, Evil Geniuses is a much, much, much better team than IHC. This game should be a landslide in favor of Evil Geniuses. It shouldn't even be close. But people are acting like this is actually, could potentially be an upset game. And to me, that's mostly just being predicated on all the points that I said before about EG being irrelevant the past 2 years, about EG not performing well at the showdown, and saying, oh, well, they're going downhill now because of the result at the showdown. That's not good for Evil Geniuses. They'll probably just bomb out of the event. It's like you're not taking the actual context into the situation, in my opinion. You're just looking at it at the bare bones basic level and just dismissing them right off the bat, which doesn't make sense to me. Um, you know, but guys, this IHC game should be they should win this game. This should be an expected win for Evil Geniuses. And I know I am just putting myself on a platform to just get absolutely destroyed when IHC does beat Evil Geniuses miraculously in the first round, and I look like a fucking idiot. I know I'm putting myself on that level, and it sucks because I wouldn't be putting myself on that level if I just thought that people had the accurate expectations for this team. But because they don't, I'm making myself sound like I think Evil Geniuses is this amazing fucking team. And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying Evil Geniuses is like guaranteed to make playoffs and like is gonna do fine all the way and is gonna make Legend Stage and like do really well. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that people are seriously underrating this team for no real reason other than the fact that it's Evil Geniuses and they don't like them. That just seems to be the only logic that people are using. Coming into the Challenger stage. So, yeah, it doesn't. It's very weird to me. It was frustrating for me to hear a lot of the things that I was hearing from people basically just saying that EG just sucks and they won't do anything, and that they're irrelevant at this event. I don't think that's really all that true. I think they're a team that can push other teams to the limit, the best teams to the limit. Not necessarily beat them, but definitely push them. I think it's a team that when you look at those bottom right, you look at the teams that people are having in the bottom three for their pickums, right? You'll see a lot of Mouse and maybe Big and OG. OG probably in the upper echelon of that little category, right? But you get teams like Mouse and Big, and maybe a Gamer and a Fnatic, and maybe a Gamer Legion. You have those teams at the brink, right? I think EG is in that brink. I think EG is in that category. I don't really understand how they could be any lower than that. Um, you know, but people are putting them in the category of like IHC, Greyhound, and like I don't know, maybe a Bad News Eagles and 9Z. I don't know. It just doesn't make any real sense to me. Um, I think EG is definitely a team that's better than Zero Zero Nation and Imperial. I think they're a team that's in that category of Big and Mouse and Fnatic. Obviously, Fnatic and OG being on the upper echelon of that, I think, category, right? But I personally think they're a team that could potentially sneak out in those bottom two spots, bottom three spots. Um, and people are just acting like this team will just absolutely get dumpstered and body bagged and shipped back to North America, which just doesn't make any sense to me. Um, it's disingenuous in my eyes. Um, and so I just kind of put here some does EG have an identity? Was EG's showdown result actually good for EG? I think it is in some respects. Obviously, I'm not saying that them losing the showdown was a good thing. I obviously want to see them at the fall final, and I think they should have been there. I think they should have made it through the qualifier if they hit their expectation. Um, but what I do think is good for them is it gives them an opportunity to look at their Dust 2, see what Fluxo did to them on Dust 2. Try to, maybe take some of the stuff that they had. Look at how they exploited you. Try to pick up on what they did and try to make your Dust 2 better. Right? Same thing for Nuke. Use this as an opportunity to gain some fresh perspectives on Nuke because it was one of your best maps. It is probably still, I would say, one of your best maps. But this gives you an opportunity to say, hey, look, humble yourself a little bit. Maybe we're not as good. We can get much better at Nuke than we currently are at. And these are the things that we can change. And this is the things that Fluxo did to us. And this is maybe, our rotations weren't that good here. We need to fix those in this respect, right? Those type of things. I think this is actually a good thing for EG because EG is a team that has constantly showed improvement, and with the coaching staff that they have, I feel very confident that they're going to be able to address these maps in particular and be like, look, we can use this to grow and improve, even though it sucks we won't be in the fall final. So I think it's actually, in some ways, a good result. Or not the result that's good, but what can be gained from the result is good. And does EG have an identity? I think it's quite clear that they do. Nealon's style of in-game leading and the way he even plays around his in-game leading, I really enjoy. He's a slow caller, very CIS style, but they can pick up the pace when they want to. Um, you know, and on top of that, Nealon is a very aggressive player who seems like he's really learned when to be aggressive on this team and when not to be aggressive. At first, he was a super aggressive player on EG, and it got him in really bad positions many times. Sometimes it worked out, but many times it didn't. And he looked, like he was like doing something weird. But it seems like he's got a better understanding now that he's kind of gotten a feel for the team as to when he should be aggressive and when he shouldn't be aggressive, how to call around that. And for me personally, I've said this multiple times, I've personally always enjoyed in-game leaders who like to be aggressive and who like to take the fight first so that they can have their breezies and their automatics come in after them and clean up the kills, right? If Nealon's not able to get them. And so that's something that I really enjoy out of in-game Nealon as an in-game leader is that he plays a slow style, but he's a very aggressive player, and that he'll try to make plays, and even if it doesn't work out for him, the other players are then set up to succeed and to pick up the pieces. And that's something, and in many ways, it can help you as an in-game leader getting that information for your team. Um, you know, and not only that, but if you do end up dying, it's still in-game leading from the death cam or from the grave essentially isn't always a bad thing because you can switch between players and you can see what everyone's doing and you can kind of help control what's going on on the map, right? Um, Compared to when you're alive and you're baiting your teammates. it's always one of the reasons why I didn't like Stanislaw and I really like Nealon. It's just that style of Stanislaw has that style of baiting his teammates, which to me I've never been a fan of. But so EG definitely has a T side identity. I think they have a CT side identity is kind of this it's not that different, right? But I think CT side, they like to be aggressive. Breezy's a very aggressive player. So is Nealon. They're trying to set Cirque up to succeed much better. I think he's been performing a lot better as of recently, especially at the showdown. He was very consistent against Fluxo. I think Breezy has his moments. He's kind of dipped off a little bit since Pro League, but I'm hoping that kind of comes back with the gravitas of the major being here. Automatic has looked good, and I expect him to perform well again. Hexed, I don't expect him to perform that well at this major just because it is his first major. It's a very big event for him to be playing at, and he's looked better as time has gone on with this team, but I'm a little just, again, it just has to deal with the nerves and the experience, right? I'm not going to set massive expectations on a player like Hext right now. Plus, he's playing a little bit more of a supportive role in the team. Um, you know, and then, obviously, so I said stuff about Cirque and Breeze and Automatic and Nealon. He's been to a major before. I don't, I think he's going to be fine. I don't really have too many issues with Nealon. And I think Vorborg's doing a good job, and I think Malik is doing a great job, and I think the whole team is just doing a great job. And it's just sad to see people disrespect the team the way that they are and put these Brazilian teams over them when, frankly, they do not deserve it. Their results don't deserve it, and if you just watch the teams play, they don't deserve it. EG is a better team, and they should be a better team than Imperial and Zero Zero Nation and all the Brazilian teams, minus Furia at this challenger stage. And even then, if you have to have a decider game between Evil Geniuses and Furia, EG might just win that. I don't think it would be out of the realm of possibility. In fact, I do think some might even say it's more even than you think between the two teams. Um, so, anyways, that's kind of my rant about EG and kind of people just discounting them coming into this major. I want to wish a happy birthday to Hext. It is his birthday today. Kind of funny because it's literally my roommate's birthday today. So when I saw it was Hext's birthday, that just kind of like I just found that kind of the timing of that is just kind of funny to me. But yeah, no. Happy birthday to Hext. I hope he has a happy birthday. I know lots of stress, but the major being literally starting tomorrow, the biggest event he's ever been in. But I hope he does get to enjoy his birthday a little bit because it's a it should be you should have fun on your birthday, even if it does mean that you have to play in a major the next day. But overall, I'm excited for the major. I just honestly I'm so hyped for this major. This major is I hope it ends up being so good. I'm excited really because the challenger stage is going to have a crowd, even though again ESL's reasoning for it isn't necessarily the best thing in the world. I'm still excited for the fact that there is going to be a crowd. I think it's going to make the event much better. I hope the content is really good at this major. And overall, um, just super excited to watch the team play. Super excited to watch the major this year. I'm so hyped. And I just kind of wanted to address some of the points that people were saying about Evo Geniuses because I just don't think they're entirely accurate. And I think people are sleeping on this team. And you know what? It's going to make me look, well, it's either going to make me look really good because I'm going to be saying this team is underrated and they deserve better. And they're either going to not perform that well, in which case, you're gonna see me like slink away into the like, well, this was what you guys were saying was the expectation, or they're gonna do really well and perform above expectation, and I can be like, I told you guys they were gonna perform above expectation. So really, this is a win-win for me. No, not not really. Um, but I do think Evil Geniuses will surprise people. I've been saying they're going to surprise people at the major for a while now. But we will see if it continues, if their growth continues. I think at the current trend that they're at, they will surprise people, especially with how I've been hearing people rate Evil Geniuses coming into the major. And it is to some degree sad knowing that NA fans still like Complexity more than Evil Geniuses, or think that Complexity is a better team over Evil Geniuses when I think EG has definitely proved that they're the second best team in NA. So, anyways, um, best of luck at the major. Thank you all for listening, and watching, I guess. And stay tuned for my I did my pick'ems. If you didn't get to see that video, I did my pick'ems and explained my reasoning for them. In the previous video. I will obviously be doing a legend stage video as well. I will be talking about evil geniuses at the major next week as well. Whether they make it or they don't to the next stage. And so stay tuned for those videos. Thank you very much for listening and watching. I do pay attention. I don't just, send these videos out and not look. Even though I do this for fun, I'm not doing this to get views. I'm really mostly doing it for myself because I just want to talk about the team that I love. But it does make me feel better when I, see that people are supporting my videos. So, thank you very much for doing that. And yeah, that's it. That's all I've got to say for this video. So, thank you very much for listening, and best of luck, Evil Geniuses, at the major.